What's happening, folks? Welcome back to Celtic Fans TV. It is starting 11 prediction time for tomorrow's trip to Leipzig in the Champions League. It's match day 3. We'll be halfway through the group stage after tomorrow's game in Germany, and it is a massive one for Celtic with 1 point on the board so far. This doublehead against Leipzig promises to really shape the group, and I think if we want to have any chance of progressing, we need to come out with a better head-to-head after these 2 games. I'm flying out to Germany tomorrow. We will be there, and we should be in a position to bring you all of the normal full-time content after the game in Germany tomorrow. Absolutely buzzing for it. Can't wait to get there. But off the back of Saturday's 2-1 win over Motherwell, there is some concerns about our form. We've had a slight dip in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Obviously the St Mirren game, and then that game at the weekend where we done well to grind out the win in the end, but it's fair to say it wasn't vintage Celtic under Ange Postecoglou. Does seem like that break, the postponements, the game against Livingston getting postponed, then international break came at a really bad time for us, because leading into that game against Livingston we were absolutely flying, playing some really good stuff, but that seems to just have interrupted our rhythm a wee bit. We've got some concerns in terms of injuries as well, and I think even though Leipzig have been inconsistent so far this season, even since Marco Rose took over, they had a brilliant win over Dortmund. I think they beat Dortmund 4-0, then they lost 3-0 away at Gladbach, and they had a good 4-0 win at the weekend, so they are really inconsistent. But having said that, you expected 4 or 5 weeks ago us to be coming into this game in really good form, and when you looked at Leipzig, you thought they were a bit off it, but that's how quickly things can change in football. It's going to be a really tough task for us over there in the Red Bull Arena, but we need to believe that we can get something. The performance has to be full of belief from the players. They have to go and play the same way they did in Warsaw. They put in a really good, credible performance that night and should have won the game, so we need that similar level against what I expect to be a better Leipzig team than the one that faced Shakhtar in their first home game in this group stage. So we'll get to the team. In goals, I expect it will be Joe Hart. Came in for a little bit of criticism at the weekend. First time for a while, maybe the first time really since he's arrived at Celtic that he came in for some criticism. Maybe his performances recently against St Mirren, there was some question marks. I think at the weekend, the one between him and Juranovic looks really bad. You can't tell unless you're on the pitch whose fault that is. If Joe Hart's screaming at Juranovic to leave it, then it's Juranovic's fault. If Joe Hart hasn't communicated well enough and come rushing out of his goal, then he's equally, if not more, culpable. So that was symptomatic of the whole performance on Saturday. I just thought we weren't quite at it. We looked a little bit sluggish, and there was a few times throughout the game where either breakdowns in communication or bad decision making put us in much more trouble than we should have been in that game. We should have been more ruthless with the chances, yes, but we gave ourselves more problems than we should have with our own sort of indecision and poor communication at times. At right back, it will be Josip Juranovic. The defence is a big one for us because we're missing 2 massive figures in Cameron Carter-Vickers and Carl Starfelt. We debated at the weekend, myself and Kenny in the post-match pint, about how big a factor Carter-Vickers being out is. I don't think you can say that this Celtic team is wholly reliant on one centre-half, or 2 centre-halves for that matter, to function and play it at its highest level. But I think you can see that Carter-Vickers is a huge miss for this team. I think he breeds a sense of confidence throughout the defence and across the whole team. We know that as supporters watching, we feel more confident when Carter-Vickers is playing, and there's no doubt his teammates will as well, because they know they have that extra security because of the level he can defend at, and they don't have that just now because we're going to be forced tomorrow night to go with 2 inexperienced players, particularly at this level, in Stephen Welsh and Moritz Jens. I think they both look like someone who needs an experienced head, a calm head beside them, and I don't think they're really helping each other in terms of their inexperience and probably nerves at times at the weekend, it seemed like, because in the second half, locked at 1-1, the crowd were getting a bit agitated, understandably, given the performance at that time, but both Jens and Welsh had trouble finding a teammate with passes out for the back, And it's that sort of anxiety that away from home in Europe can really, really get exploited. So I'm concerned about that. I think we all are tomorrow. You need to defend well away from home in Europe. If you've watched Celtic away from home in Europe for any period in the last 20, 30 years, you know that we will get flustered at some point in the game if we don't defend well. And it's a big ask for those two tomorrow at the heart of that Celtic defence to go away to a team like Leipzig and put in a big performance, one good enough to get us a result. But we have to believe that they can. Greg Taylor will complete the back four at left back. The midfield, I expect it to be McGregor, Hatate and O'Reilly. Again, no one of the three were absolutely scintillating on Saturday. I thought Hatate was probably the pick of the bunch until he plays Motherwell one-on-one and McGregor has to get sent off. We will need a big performance out of those three. Interesting, again, talking to Kenny in the post-match pint about McGregor's role and how his approach maybe changes even subconsciously from a mental point of view without Carter Vickers behind him and Starfelt as well. Without that solid pairing at the back, McGregor is maybe concerned that behind him we're a wee bit more exposed if we turn the ball over, if he's the one dictating play and having to play risky passes in between the lines and try and find the forward players. If we turn it over, we're even more exposed than we would otherwise be with the two first choice players in there. So need a huge performance from the guys in midfield tomorrow. You always do. You need a big performance from everyone away from home in Europe, but particularly in midfield and just in front of that defence when it is depleted, we need big performances from all three of those guys. On the right hand side, Lee Alabada looks like he might miss the game for religious reasons. He didn't train today, so there's doubt over whether he's going to take part tomorrow. So I think Dyson Maeda will play on the left hand side and Jota will go to the right hand side. Again, a lot of talk about Maeda at the weekend. Didn't have a great performance. I think he was a little bit unfairly criticised at the beginning of the season. I think in a game away from home in Europe, the work rate and the tracking back, the defensive work he can put in can really help us in a game like tomorrow. But we need to be ruthless in the final third as well, and that's something that all three of the front three were maybe guilty of at the weekend, and everyone, Kyogo, Yakimakis, Jota, all guilty of it in Warsaw against Shakhtar Donetsk. When we had them pinned back in that second half, we weren't clinical enough and we didn't put the chances away. To get victories away from home in Europe, you have to be ruthless. I'm sure the team know that, and it's really early in their experience and their journey in the Champions League, and I'm sure we can develop to become that team that kills the opposition and punishes mistakes, but right now we're not there. So yes, we need big performances defensively. Jota looked tired late on at the weekend. I hope there's no underlying injury or anything there. We need big performances on both sides of the pitch, offensively and defensively, from the wide players tomorrow. I think Kyogo Furuhashi will lead the line through the middle. I mentioned this last week when we went to play Leverkusen in Germany in the Europa League last season. We were really, really good on the counter-attack. The same against Ferencváros. The game in Warsaw was slightly different because we didn't play on the counter-attack very often at all because we were the dominant team with most of the ball. That's not common away from home in Europe. Shakhtar were obviously playing not even in their home country, never mind their own stadium. So I think that did change the dynamic slightly. I think tomorrow we will go back to a dynamic where Leipzig are the home team. They have the majority of the ball and we have to carry a threat on the counter-attack. And we need Kyogo, if he gets a chance, to put it away. Yakimakis is back available. I think he'll start on the bench. There's no doubt we'll see him at some point in the game. But that is the 11 I think the manager will pick for tomorrow. As I say, coming into this game with a different feeling from what we thought we would be even 2.5, 3 weeks ago. But we've got to go there with the belief that we can get a result. And if not, we've got to put in a credible performance, make it as close as it can be so that when we come to Celtic Park next week, we're in a position where we can possibly win the head-to-head against Leipzig. It's a massive game. As I say, I can't wait to fly out to Germany tomorrow. We'll bring you all of the post-match content from there, from the stadium, in Leipzig. Wherever you're watching the game tomorrow night, enjoy it. Like this video, comment with your own thoughts below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you in Germany tomorrow. Cheers.